Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Denise Ravel. Welcome to the 20th live MediaScope chat. This Friday, I'm really pleased to be joined by Eyeota founder, Trent Lloyd, and an ex-colleague of mine, and we're certainly going to talk a little about that as well during the chat. But welcome, Trent. Thanks so much for joining in.
Thanks very much for having me, Denise.
Wonderful. And thank you also for persisting with a few technical issues, but we finally did get there. First of all, and to start off with the chat, and also hello to everyone who's watching us live, really appreciate your support and your interest in these live chats. To start off the chat, and it really anchors a lot of what we're going to be talking about for the next 45 minutes or so, I ask a general opening question, and that opening question is really to give me, Trent, your opinion on, or your sort of top line overview and your opinion on the market at the moment, how it's going, any challenges, and of course, where are the green shoots?
Sure thing. I mean, Australia is really a pretty sophisticated market. It's one of the most advanced markets globally for programmatic ad buying. Ad spend per user is incredibly high comparatively when you look at other markets. Cost of inventory is pretty high. The supply is a bit limited, and generally it's a pretty innovative market. So for us, it's very important. It's also increasingly seen globally as a great market for testing. We've got several market firsts here. Both publisher or supply side as well as buy side. We've got global media companies who only sell their data here in the first instances as a bit of an isolated test. We've had website optimization where our data is used directly by brands to customize the delivery of content to users who visit their websites. That's something that we've been doing here as a market first, as well as trying new things like selling our data for video targeting on a cost per view basis. So yeah, it's a very strong market as far as we're concerned, and we see really good growth here.
I'm hearing that more and more, so I find that actually a really interesting comment. I certainly mentioned a couple of times yesterday as I was listening to people talk about their experiences in the market. Mm-hmm. Why? I mean, we're still at such early phases. Are we too hard on ourselves? Because, everyone feels like we're confused by it. We don't understand it. There's obviously an issue of trust in the market around the whole programmatic space. Mm-hmm. Too many acronyms, too many layers between buyer and seller. Again, are we too hard on ourselves? Are we not recognising that we're in fact, quite ahead on the curve in this?
Well, I think we probably are generally, but that's also a result of isolation in the sense that not everybody has the opportunity to visit and talk to people in other markets and get the perspectives of publishers and trading desks and platforms in other markets. So yeah, I think we probably are a little bit hard on ourselves, and I think sometimes it takes visitors from other markets that we generally presume to be far more advanced than ours to come here, spend a week or two going and talking to people, and they often articulate it better. And I think the advancement of the relative sophistication here and innovation is driven by the fact that it's a bit of a melting pot of people from all different markets around the world. So we've got a great skill set. We've got people entering the market all the time with things they've learnt and have tried elsewhere. But probably more than that, there's a hell of a lot of competition here for a small market, pretty much in all areas of the industry. And that has to drive innovation and put the pressure on people to be trying new things. Otherwise, they're going to get left behind and not have much business.
I think that's really true. I mean, I've been conducting a bit of a consolidation on that digital mediascape for about 12 to 18 months now. I'm more now coming to the view that perhaps not a consolidation, more of an ongoing evolution. As I'm seeing other businesses approach me to launch new categories within the digital mediascape. But yeah, rather than it shrinking, more evolving. And, businesses like yours, as an example, Trent, perhaps, you're evolving too, opening up new product services, finding new opportunities, and so on.
Yeah, I think you have to. always have to be looking to evolve and looking for what's next and listening to what your customers and partners are telling you and asking for. And, without necessarily compromising your core offering, something we've very much decided not to be years ago is to try not to be everything. And I think there's still some players out there who confuse themselves and the market by often claiming to do pretty much everything. Whereas we've gone the other way and focused very much on our core offering of being the audience data marketplace. And when we evolve, it's more about how do we make our data applicable and useful in different contexts. And what I mentioned earlier is one isolated example of that is it being used for facilitating the targeting of content on a brand's website. So those are sorts of things we keep our eyes open for.
Great, and I certainly want to have a deeper conversation about the services that Eyeota offer, and indeed some of your experiences in the market. But let's go back a few years first, perhaps to those early days where you and I first met. And I think I will often say that one of the joys of being in the industry for such a long time has been knowing so many people and seeing how their careers have progressed and evolved. And we certainly move and evolve with the market. So you and I first met when you were the new or commercial director, I think, at Fairfax Digital.
Sales
director, sorry. And I was doing my earn-out year through the Essential Baby acquisition. That was, I think, in 2007. And prior to that role at Fairfax Digital, you came out of more of the traditional part of our industry at Fairfax. What did you do prior to Fairfax Digital? You were in the mag or newspaper?
I'd had a few years working with Karim Temzamani, who went on to Google as sales director for Fairfax Magazine's division. And then prior to that, I had various roles across the newspaper part of the business. So very much went from kind of paper and ink to digital, and I had a working relationship with Liam Walsh at the time, and ended up making a move across to Piermont from Sussex Street, as it was then, to work with Liam on the digital business.
Yeah, and it was such an active floor back then, is what I recall. There were just rows and rows and rows of us.
Yeah.
And it was 2007, so it was still relative. It's happy days now, but happy days in a different way. It was certainly happy days back then. It was very much cost per thousand on a banner. I think Facebook was a word that was just starting to be uttered. I don't actually think that it had, certainly didn't have the market presence that it has now. I think, certainly much simpler days in terms of that landscape. Obviously, it was still an incredibly manual operation to buy and sell online media. But just really wanted, I suppose, to get your reflections on the changes that you've seen in the industry, Trent, and particularly as you've gone from, traditional media to sales director of a large, traditional publisher, and now, of all things, running an international data business. How did that happen, Trent? How on earth did that happen?
It's a good question. To answer where do I start? There's a lot to that question. In terms of what's happened in the industry, there's probably just too much to cover off. The other thing that was very much just starting back in those particular Fairfax days was the early days of ad networks, and names like Adconian were just being bandied about for the first time. So a hell of a lot's changed with that. And obviously, since sort of the Adify days, and then 2009, 2010, we started to see what was evolving in terms of programmatic and the evolution of that. For almost a couple of years, you had a local DSP like BrandScreen who had the market essentially to themselves here, and then before you know it, you've got all the globally leading brands in that space in market here as well. In terms of how Eyeota happened, when I left Fairfax, I spent a couple of years with a California-based tech and services business called Adify, and that's where I met my co-founders, Kevin Tan, who was based in Singapore, and Christina Prokop, who was based in Berlin. We were part of the international management team of Atify. During our time there, it was acquired by Cox Media in the US. And post-acquisition, we're keeping our eye on things and saw this surge in programmatic advertising and this interest in sort of what was then early stage audience-based targeting around the world. There seemed to be a lot of kind of startups emerging in all other areas of the industry. There seemed to be a real lack of quality audience data at scale in most markets, particularly outside the US. In addition to which, any companies that were trying to do it were pretty much US-based companies trying to do it, trying to handle kind of international markets essentially on the side. All of the markets have their own idiosyncrasies and own little nuances that you need to address through local presence. And we decided to move away, and we felt we had a very good team, very good relationships with agencies, with publishers in several key markets that would allow us to kind of immediately get going in terms of generating business and revenues in multiple markets at the same time. And that there was a window of opportunity to build out a business in those international markets. So we started in 2010. Our CTO, Chris Sandberg, who's obviously an incredibly important part of our team, joined in early 2012. He's really driven the vision around our innovative programming and tools and tech infrastructure. Here we are 5.5 years later, and we're the global leader for local audience data. We've got offices here at Melbourne. We've got offices in Berlin, London, Singapore, Tokyo as of late last year, and in January we opened our office in New York, which is pretty exciting as well.
Yeah, that is very exciting indeed. Congratulations to you. And we will claim it. Do you claim it as an Australian-based business? But even though it sounds like founders are from all corners of the world.
Oh, it depends who I'm talking to.
Yeah.
It's look, definitely I like to think of it as partly Australian based, and we do have an Australian entity, obviously. I mean, our headquarters, officially, and then the company's incorporated in Singapore. But it was part founded in Australia. As I said, we have an entity here. We've had an office and someone here from day one. Australia as a market has played a critical role in building the business. There were some really key people particularly on the buy side of the market, people who were, I suppose, in that very early programmatic community back in the days when there was probably 20 people in programmatic in the market in total, when trading desks were sometimes all of 2 or 3 people in total. There were some people there that were really bought into what we were trying to do. They saw the value for them in having a successful Eyeota, having that quality, accessible source of targeting data. And so they were there were some people here in Australia who were pivotal in helping build the business in the early days. So very much Eyeota is part Australian as far as we're all concerned at Eyeota.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. We like it. Well, I know more than, you would know also, but from the digital MediaScope, I'm always very pleased to put an Aussie logo on it. And I tell you what, I don't do that too often anymore. I wanted to pick up on something that you just mentioned. Again, it's almost like Australia Day. I seem to be asking you about lots of questions about that. But you did say the unique, you kind of tailor to the uniqueness of each market that you're in. What's unique about our market compared to some of those markets, compared to some of the other markets that you operate in? Aside from
there's
size, no doubt.
I'm sorry?
Size, no doubt, would be one thing, but...
Sure. Size is something that's probably not something we can really, I suppose, cater for so much. It's more, we're always trying to add depth to our segments by recruiting more sources. One of the things that's difficult or challenging, I suppose, about this market is the fact that there are few sort of individual sources of data at scale. Now, on one hand, that reinforces the value proposition we have to publishers. For most publishers, it's very difficult to efficiently make their own audience data available for sale programmatically. You need the infrastructure and the integration or integrations with auto at a segment level to make it worthwhile for an agency. I guess when we talk about nuances between markets, it can be languages. So having taxonomies available in local languages, whether it be German, whether it be Japanese, which we do as a couple of examples. Other things are just even the purchase cycles are different for products. If you talk to marketers of auto brands in the US versus parts of Europe versus Australia, they'll all talk to you about different behaviours in those local markets of people buying a car. And so when we look at things like, okay, what shelf life do we put on a segment such as auto intender, that shelf life will be different in Australia to what it is in the US to what it is, say, in Germany. I suppose last and certainly not least is pricing. Australia has a pretty strong price for inventory, and the pricing of data. The data is used in that programmatic context in addition to the inventory. So the pricing has to have some kind of relativity to the inventory. In some markets in Southeast Asia, for example, 20, 30 cents is what's paid for some inventory. So obviously in the markets like that, it's not particularly viable to be trying to sell data for $1.50 or $2 CPM on top.
Interesting. I always learn so much from these, so thank you. We've spoken about Eyeota.
Mm-hmm.
So really, playing in that data management platform space. Also wanted to get a view from you and that data space, of course. Also wanted to get a view. I mean, you're working with publishers. Give us a sense from a publisher's point of view. I'm a small publisher. I mean, I am a small publisher, very small.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a niche publisher or even a large publisher, and I think, okay, an incremental revenue stream for myself, want to get more of a insights into my audience also. How does it work end to end? I'm a publisher, I ring up Eyeota and say, okay, we want to work with you. What's the process from there? Give us a sense, because I really want to also promote this live chat to some of the more niche publishers that MediaScope reaches.
Yeah, sure. Look, and just to be clear, we're not a data management platform.
Sorry.
I suppose no. That's fine. It's a common misconception, and people often ask. And from a pure technology perspective, that is, I suppose, the easiest bucket to put us in. But we do not sell ourselves. We're not a platform that people license to use as a DMP in the same way that they might do so with a Crux or a Lotame or an Adobe or something like that. In fact, we partner with those companies, and we make our data available on a license basis in those platforms, so their DMP clients can use our data for modeling and insights, which then drives other behaviours at a data buying level. But to directly answer your question, it's really quite a straightforward process. I mean, we work with publishers by having them place our custom tag or pixel on some of their pages, and that tag is structured with variables to pass us anonymous attributes or signals about users who visit those sites, and those signals depend on how somebody behaves on that site. So it can vary enormously. I mean, if we are working with a website that is purely content based about, I don't know, politics, and people go there and they consume content about politics, but there's no membership or subscription or anything, then the segmentation. The segmentation we can collect in this is pretty much going to be interest equals politics based on repeat visitation. At the other end of the spectrum will be sites that maybe are ticketing sites or dating sites, for example, where people go and create an account, or they subscribe or join, they become a member, and part of that process is declaring information about themselves, gender, male, age 40 to 45, live in Redfern, not to give anything away about myself, but these sorts of variables that we collect and aggregate together. There is no fee for a publisher to work with us in that way. We work purely on a revenue share basis. So we collect and aggregate and verify all that data. It's segmented according to our taxonomy. Our system is integrated with all the DSPs all the leading DSPs globally. We've got well over 70 integrations, and media buyers access Eyeota data through the DSP platforms that they're already using to execute programmatic campaigns. At the end of the month, they all report back to us, and we share that revenue back with the publishers who provided it to us in the first place.
And excuse me, I'm so sorry, everyone. A frog in the throat. What size publishers? You know, again, MediaScope, very small, very niche. You need to reach a certain audience level, because of course, you know, just because you've got a smaller audience, a niche audience, you might have a smaller audience, you aren't going to reach those economies of scale. Is it relevant to all publishers, or is there a ceiling that you kind of say it probably won't work for you?
Look, we are always very realistic and accurate with forecasts when publishers ask for them. We prefer to manage expectations appropriately, rather than have publishers, you know, join us under kind of the misconception that they're going to earn a certain amount of money. Obviously, like with ad sales, there is a direct kind of relationship, if you will, between the size of a website's audience and the type of data that they pass us, and then what the revenue potential is. That said, we have publishers that are, in some instances, you know, a tenth the size of another publisher in terms of their audience size, but because of the type of data they pass us, they make more money. So we, as Eyeota, we don't have a policy that says we won't work with a publisher who has fewer than X users per month. We obviously, from a business development perspective, we prioritize above a certain threshold, but it's really, the prioritization is very much about the type of data more so than the volume. And frankly, more often than not, it is smaller to medium sites that have a lot of potential to collect and pass us quality data or interesting segmentation, rather than sites that kind of win out on mass reach. So from day one, our philosophy in all markets has been about aggregating together high numbers of sites to build an aggregated, scalable set of data on a segment-by-segment basis.
And incremental revenue streams, or I mean, do you regard it as incremental or larger? Is it a more important piece of the pie in terms of that revenue split for a publisher? I suppose
I think what publishers... Yeah, look, I think what publishers really should think about with us is that it is genuinely incremental. I know words like incremental and ancillary get bandied about a lot, but you know, we are not selling ad space at all. We're certainly not selling ad space on that publisher's site. What we do is completely in addition to whatever it is that they're doing right now, whether or not they're selling inventory themselves, whether an ad network is selling their inventory, whether or not they already happen to be selling audience targeting on site bundled with their own inventory. None of that matters. What we do is essentially extract from their site, if you will, you know, signals, anonymous values about the users visiting their site, and we make that actionable, you know, as targetable profile data in the programmatic ecosystem. It is completely ancillary. You know, publishers, you know, one of the issues in market that publishers are talking about is, you know, the declining ad tech dollar. You know, the fact that there's so many layers, as you mentioned earlier, various platform pieces of the platform puzzle, I suppose, that because of the role they play and the relationship they have with a publisher, they do take a piece of the dollar that's paid for inventory on that publisher's site. Eyeota does not. Yeah, Eyeota is creating a situation for a publisher whereby user who was on their site is on another site that you know, seeing inventory that is available and being bought programmatically, and is being targeted based on anonymous information that we learned from that publisher. You know, they're seeing these ads anyway. We're just facilitating the targeting of that user based on information shared with us by that publisher. And as a consequence of that, that publisher earns some dollars that they otherwise wouldn't have.
And a passive revenue stream as well. They really don't, you know, aside from placing a cookie on their site.
Just placing the tag, yeah.
placing the tag. It really is, kind of a passive revenue stream that goes, is part of the revenue mix. And I constantly say to any publisher who asks for my opinion on their revenue mix is diversify your revenue streams within advertising and increasingly important beyond advertising. And of course, monetizing your data through Eyeota is, a really important passive incremental revenue stream that can be relatively easy to manage.
Yeah, particularly when there's no underlying cost. Any business, whether it's media or any industry you can think of, obviously there are opportunities to grow, to start new lines of business, whatever. And in most cases, there's always going to be some kind of P&L impact in the sense that you have to hire someone or several people to deal with it. You have to need some CapEx budget to buy something or whatever it might be. And this is an example where there's not. So, for a lot of publishers individually, it's not huge money. For other publishers, we generate fantastic revenue for them. But in either case, it can be as passive as they want it to be. But that's one way any publisher really assess this is, okay, well, I don't need to make any upfront investment or any ongoing investment in headcount or anything else. This just ticks over on the side. That's great. And it's something I can't do for myself. In terms of the passivity of the relationship, it's a bit of an 80-20 rule in the sense that there's probably 20% ballpark about publishers who are quite engaged with us. Under various scenarios, they'll come to us and they'll say, hey, we're making some changes to our site. Can you come and talk to us about what that may mean in terms of potential new segments that we might be able to pass you? We're running a competition. Does that create a new opportunity? We're launching a new site or we've acquired another site. There's things like that. We've recently published a great case study on a travel publisher where we worked with them to identify other segmentation we could collect from their site to juice the revenues that they were generating on a monthly basis. So it can go both ways.
What kind of insights does the publisher get on the data that they're passing to you?
Generally speaking, it's largely to do with overlapping. So, looking at what else does Eyeota know about those users that you're passing us. If you think about our reach in this market, statistically, there's a strong likelihood that out of all the users that go to your website each month, there's a significant proportion of those that we've seen at least once before on one of the other sites that works with us to pass us data. So the sort of insights we can provide back to a publisher in reporting include, those sorts of additional insights. We're telling them profile data about sections of their site user base that they most likely didn't already know. What the publisher does with that is entirely up to them.
I think that's such a good benefit for a publisher. As part of
the other thing that they get, sorry, Denise, the other thing that they get as standard every month, of course, is a report from us that says, here's a breakdown of all the segmentation you pass us, and here's the sales outcome, I suppose, against every segment, in terms. So they're able to see what segments they pass us that are in demand compared to those that are not, and what's generating the revenue for them versus what's not. And in some instances, depending on the publisher, they can use that to look at maybe passing us more data or adding some segmentation or various things.
And as I was saying, I think that that's such a nice insight for a publisher to get that report and to see, how, to get that and see a deep insight into their audience through your data. I'd like also to, when we highlight the replay, I'll also link to the case study that you just mentioned on the travel publisher. I think that would be really valuable for the audience, for anyone that wants to get a bit more of an idea of how they could perhaps use you. I also want to touch how a media agency or a marketer, how are they're buying based on the value segments that you're putting through the buying system.
Exactly. I mean, I think, Denise, you can go back to my print days, and advertisers have wanted And advertisers have wanted to target actual audiences, forever. It's just that, traditional media has always done so on a pretty generic kind of aggregated basis. If you wanted to reach tertiary educated businessmen, you would buy an ad in the Financial Review. We fast forward to now, what we're doing is facilitating that precise segment-based targeting in the digital programmatic context. So marketers for years have been profiling with the help of their agencies, profiling their customer base and talking about and strategizing about, who are our customers, who are our potential customers, what do they look like in terms of, combinations of demographics or things they're interested in or things they're intending to do, and wanting to target them on that basis. This is why we build out segments by the thousand. I mean, globally, we've got thousands, 5,000 plus segments or something like that now, across demographics, interests, purchase intent, and then also the branded partners. And the branded partners such as Experian and Ipsos, CoreLogic, Roy Morgan. These are companies that brands have been in relationships with for years and years and years, and spending a lot of money with them. To profile their audiences, and then often have to turn around and essentially dumb down those insights when it comes to actually executing a media buy. Whereas now, if you're a telco or a bank or whatever, and you work with one of those branded partners to profile your customer base, whether it be Emma or GeoTribes or Helix Personas or Mosaic or whatever it might be, you have the ability to turn around and log into your DSP of choice and specifically buy those actual profile segments. So that's what they're doing.
It's a whole new world, that's for sure, Trent. I mean, again, such a short time ago that, we were operating in the market very, very differently. And again, we forget that we're still at such early days of this. And I think it's so exciting that, it's kind of recognised that Australia is really at the forefront of it and really, on the curve, right on the curve.
Very much so.
Great. One of the big issues that's often spoken about with this, and indeed I think there was something on the 7:30 report this week about insurance businesses or health businesses selling their data to marketers. But one of the big issues that we often hear about, the word data gets mentioned and straight away comes to mind the issue of privacy for consumers. Mm-hmm. If you can give us your thoughts on that, why you think it's an issue. Is there anything, where are you going, Trent? What's he doing? Hello? Sorry, everyone. We seem to have lost Trent. He got up and started moving. I'm not too sure what happened. Hopefully he'll be back with us soon. He maybe didn't want to answer the question about privacy. I'm only joking. I'm quite sure that he was well prepared for that. It was all going so well. I'm wondering if he's still looking at us. Trent, maybe just come back in if you can. You've frozen on me. I'm not too sure what's happened. Can everyone still see me? Trent has left us though. I don't know why he got up and started moving all of a sudden. Nope, he might come back in now. Trent, just try and come back in for us. We really want to get that question covered off about privacy. I think it's a really important, here he comes back in. Trent, just come back in for me. Here he comes. Sorry, everyone. We'll find out what happened. Here he comes.
Looks like it's okay.
Back in now.
Hello.
Hi, what happened? You all of a sudden got up and moved. We lost you. Hello? Are you there? We can see you. Okay. Everyone else can see.
I can't hear you guys.
Everyone else can. Everyone else can hear both of us.
4C, Denise, I must say.
Oh.
Look, I'll take a gamble here, given apparently we can be seen and heard. The question was around privacy. Yes, you're right. We do hear about privacy a lot. I think it is a classic example of misunderstanding, misinformation and assumptions. I think there's a huge chasm in the knowledge and understanding of this area between people in the industry and then the average consumer on the street. I think it's easy for media, and I think you mentioned the 7:30 report or something, to drum up drama about this. People who are not part of the industry hear the word data and they tend to think about personal information. People are finding out my name, address, my kids' names, all this sort of thing. Whereas within the context of digital advertising and programmatic, it's just nothing of the sort. And it's almost ridiculous to think that advertisers want to invest in so many different pieces of creative to be able to target people at a personally identifiable level digitally. We work with only non-personally identifiable information. Nothing that we have can be re-engineered to identify an individual or make them targetable on a personal individual basis. It's to some extent it's like putting meat through a grinder. You can't put it back the other way and turn it into a steak again. I mean, there's any information that's sent to us is only sent to us at a level such as gender equals male, age equals 25 to 29, maybe postcode, things of this nature. Denise, if you've got any other questions, I might need you to type them in because I can neither see nor hear you. I'm sorry.
I just typed in
what's on my radar? I mean, at the moment, as I mentioned earlier, we are doing some interesting work with some brands from a website optimization perspective, using our data for them to be able to target messaging to visitors to their websites on the same basis that they would target their advertising messaging. That's getting real traction. It's something we're only doing here in Australia. In terms of next week, I'm actually heading up to Tokyo on Sunday. It's Ad Week up there next week. So we, as I mentioned earlier, we opened up our office in Tokyo late last year. Team's making really good traction up there. We've signed up a lot of publishers. We've got branded data sets already live in that market, such as Bombora and Experian. So looking forward to getting up there and getting my hands dirty in that market a little bit more. Tadpole.
Up, 2 up.
I think it's fantastic, the question about News Limited blocking readers who use ad blockers. I am all for publishers taking control in this situation. There's companies emerging, SourcePoint is one I'm familiar with in the US, who are looking to empower publishers to control who does and does not see their content. I mean, frankly, I consider it theft. I think we've all had a very good run of things, in terms of what the internet offers us. I think, compared to other media, most advertising online is far from intrusive. Of course, there are examples to the contrary, and as an industry, we need to take control of pop-ups and creative executions and screen takeovers, whether it be mobile or desktop, and think about the impact on the consumer. But at the end of the day, publishers spend a lot of money and put a lot of resource into creating the content that people want to read, and they should be remunerated for that, whether it be through subscription or advertising.
Right. I'm going to take Trent off now. I'm going to take Trent off. So I'm just typing to him, everyone. Sorry if this is a bit disjointed. I really don't know what happened. Trent, feel free to sign off. Okay, Okay, so Trent's left us. Sorry about that. I really don't know what happened, everyone. I do apologise. Just a little bit about my week. As I said, I did umbrella judging yesterday, a really worthwhile day. Busy week this week, just with newsletter. MediaScope's always keep me busy. I mean, they just absolutely don't stop. I also had quite a large project to deliver for PricewaterhouseCoopers. I'm really looking forward to their Outlook report launching in a few weeks. So that kept me busy. And this afternoon, I'm very much looking forward to another walking meeting with a colleague. They've become quite popular. I think this is, maybe my 15th walking meeting, and you can see Dash comes with us, and we go for a nice little bushwalk near my house. Very, very popular. Next week, no conferences or anything next week, but of course the following week, Mumbrella 360. So hopefully I'll get a bit of work done. And then I'm looking forward to a three or 4 week trip with my family in a few weeks. So no live chats over that time, but I will come back completely refreshed and ready to go. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us for the 20th live chat. I do apologise for the technical issues that we had at the end, but I think Trent really handled it very, very well. And we got some good questions there. So I'm going to stop the recording. But thanks, everyone, for joining.